Good morning and welcome to the Raben Report. I'm your host, Elliot Raben, so get ready to get triggered. Good morning and welcome to the Raben Report. I'm your host, Elliot Raben, as you might have heard in our intro, and with me, as usual, is my expert panel, Marshall, Adam, and Daniel. How are you guys?
Good. Doing great.
That's good to hear. So, before we begin, as usual, as per Spirit Live rules and regulations, all opinions expressed on the show are not those of Ryerson or Ryerson faculty and are only those of the individual commentators. Viewer discretion is advised. Let's start with our recap of the week, shall we? So first of all, Marshall said he would literally leave the room if this was not discussed. Mugabe, talk to us about that.
Wow. So, as many people know by now, the president of Zimbabwe was placed under house arrest by the military. His own administration turned against him. Now, Robert Mugabe has been the president of Zimbabwe for as long as the country has existed.
37 years.
He's 92 years old and is essentially a left-wing, I'm not going to call him fascist, that's inaccurate. He's a left-wing authoritarian dictator who essentially, prior to his taking over of the country, Zimbabwe is called Rhodesia, and it was a country that was a colonial state controlled by Britain, and it was under minority white rule for the most part, at least. And so Mugabe sought to reverse that by evicting the white farmers from their property, and now that's a big deal because Zimbabwe is an agrarian economy, so the entire economy is based off of farming. It used to be called the breadbasket of Africa, most fertile soil in the entire continent, and some of the most fertile soil in the world. And I mean, that's not the case anymore. It's the country's essentially gone to hell in a handbasket, and I mean, we may see new developments as somebody else takes over. I believe Mugabe's officially resigned by now.
Yeah, he did.
And so the likely guy to take over, and I don't want to butcher his last name, so I'm not even going to try.
His vice president?
Is that who it is?
Minangwa?
Yeah.
Minangwa?
Yeah, his vice
Something
president.
like
Yeah.
Now, I hear he's no better, so we'll have to see. And hopefully it turns out well for the people of Zimbabwe. I mean, the one thing is that Rhodesia was no great place, but you have to hold it to the same standards. You can't say, oh, it's no longer colonial, so it's automatically better. I mean...
No, you're still going to have the effects of colonialism through it, but...
Yeah,
as much
for
as I
sure.
hate talking about that,
absolutely. And I mean, the way I look at it is, in Rhodesia, there was a system of basically people were only allowed civic rights if they were educated, fluent in English, and had a certain income, which basically disqualified all the black people in the country. There was no explicit, like, no black people can participate, but those rules basically...
That's effectively apartheid. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, for sure. And so, I mean, you had a apartheid-esque situation, but people had food in their bellies. Now today you've got a, kind of reverse apartheid-esque situation, and everybody's emaciated. And so, you have to hold it at the same standard. Is Rhodesia good? Is segregation good? No, but it's no better. Is what I'd say. And I mean, I think that people champion Mugabe as this anti-colonial hero. I mean, I know Fidel Castro was a big fan of his, but I don't.
I mean, you should take that
him,
with a grain of salt, though, right?
I know. I don't consider him any better than Ian Smith, personally.
I mean, 40 years ago, Mugabe was this anti-colonial hero. Like, I believe in decolonization in all forms, and you need adjustment. You need an adjustment period from a colonial state to post-colonial.
Mm-hmm.
Mugabe was not the guy for that adjustment. One of my favorite Mugabe quotes, I pulled it up. He said, "I have died many times. I have actually beaten Jesus Christ because he only died once." So the way that Mugabe thought of himself was very high. He was a tyrant. He exterminated a tribe that, again, I don't want to butcher the name of, so I'm not even going to bother trying, that didn't agree with him at the time of his rise to power.
Well, the black nationalists really didn't like him.
Yeah.
The black nationalists were largely supportive of the Rhodesian government.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh,
That was the coalition.
Hundi?
It was a coalition government
Yeah.
after Rhodesia unilaterally became independent from the UK. They formed a coalition government with
Okay.
black nationalists.
I think
Yeah.
I got the name down actually for the tribe that was murdered, the Gukura Hundi.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
sounds about
that's
right.
it. You just gotta try phonics, guys. But
For me, like, I just think that, thank God he's gone. I have a feeling they're going to put his wife in power. The party's going to vote to put his wife in power, which is just equally as bad. So I don't have high hopes for his resignation, but the symbolism of his resignation is the end of an era. He is the last sort of surviving relic of post-colonial times in Africa, and I hope for the best. I hope they become somewhat like Botswana. Botswana is doing much better, and they border Zimbabwe, so I hope that they are on a path somehow to the standard of Botswana, and yeah, so.
So moving on, great discussion. Like, I personally don't know much about the Mugabe situation, but hopefully that discussion enlightened our viewers. Moving on, something on a light-hearted topic. Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip celebrated their 70th anniversary.
Wow.
meh.
What?
I'm so interested.
I mean,
that's
hey,
that's just
we
me
got
with
to
my
keep
opinion.
some stuff lighthearted.
I mean that is nice to see. Like,
Do you
for
hate the
royal-
monarchy?
I wouldn't say I hate the monarchy.
He hates the monarchy.
I just see that, like, it's just symbol. It's just like,
It's just symbolic at this
relic
point.
symbolism. Like,
Yeah.
symbolic from like the past and stuff.
Hey,
So
she's
it's
a
just nice
trooper.
to keep it in memory, but it doesn't affect
That's-
Canadian life anymore.
No, really.
Like, we're not servants of the royalty anymore, so like it's whatever.
Yeah,
Just
the
move
queen, the
past it.
queen is still our head of state.
Yeah.
The queen
And
is
Julie
still our-
Payette is our Governor General.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was probably the quickest topic we've ever discussed.
Congratulations.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm a big
Congrats
fan
for
of
70 years.
I'm a big fan of the monarchy. I'm very happy for the Queen and Prince Philip.
I just hope
and
Prince
it's-
Philip is in good health. There have been some health
Yeah.
scares with him.
Yeah, no, for sure.
So I hope the old man is okay.
Yeah. So moving on to the last part, I think, Adam, you'd like this. The NDP leader does not seek a seat. He doesn't want to seek a seat. Seek.
Seek a seed.
Oh, man.
That's funny.
That's funny.
That was the one
Yeah, he
pun
doesn't
of
want to
the day.
seek a seat. He doesn't want a seat in Parliament until the election. He said he doesn't
Yeah,
want to. Like, what do you make of that? If he's the leader of a political party and he doesn't want to be in Parliament, like, what the fuck?
I think he's doing that for two reasons. I read about that. I think he's doing that for two reasons. One, he can dedicate 100% of his time to campaigning for 2019.
That's pretty smart.
Because he has a lot of work to do to get the sort of core base of the NDP to trust him. And two, I think that I guess he might, in a way, be trying to avoid a very expensive by-election. By-elections are expensive. And I guess the rightful seat that he would be running in is the Brampton-Bramalea Centre. I believe that
No,
would
it's
be
actually Bramley Molten Core. Is it
Bramalea Molten
yeah.
Core.
for Jagmeet Singh, right?
Yeah. And I don't think that MP would want to step down right now. I don't think that MP want his seat fair and square. And I don't think that he would go up to him and be like, hey, listen, want to resign so I can sort of have this seat in Parliament?
Wait, who?
The MP of that seat right now.
It was Jagmeet Singh.
No, but that's provincial. He was an MPP.
Oh,
I don't.
right now it's like it's Ruby Sahota, Raj Gramal, I believe.
And they're NDP. They're
No,
both
all of them are liberal.
liberal.
All of them.
So
are liberal.
again, I don't think that why would that leader would want to resign?
No, yeah, that makes
Or
no
why
sense.
would he want to sort of have an agreement with that leader to resign?
Yeah,
if they're
and
from
so I
an
mean,
opposition
you can't
party?
do a by-election.
Yeah, you
unless they
can't do a
step down,
by-election
yeah.
unless they step
And
down.
there's no way that they would agree.
Exactly.
To
It's
that.
like,
Yeah,
hey,
no.
want to let me take this seat real quick? Like that's
maybe. I guess so.
not. I don't know. But I think primarily it's to to focus on the 2019 campaign. He's been doing this thing. He's calling it 100,000 Conversations with Canada. He's sort of very grassrootedly going door to door and talking to Canadian citizens from all different colors, genders, orientations, whatever, family situations, and he's just trying to figure out what needs to be done. And I think that that's what he's focusing on, the sort of road to 2019.
See, it's funny you say that because like my first initial criticism of thinking about that was he wasn't actually going to be able to connect on a more personal level because of his actual constituency, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then now that you're saying he's doing this, what do you call it again? 100,000?
The 100,000 Conversations with Canada.
Okay, so that shows that he actually wants to make a connection with like the residents of his
No,
constituency.
he definitely does. He has a lot of work to do. He is a bearded Sikh brown man, and to connect with 35 million Canadians, or 50 plus, or whatever representation he'll get to Sikh majority in 2019, he needs to do a lot of work. He's young as well. He needs to. No one knows who he is.
He's still a rising
He's
star.
still a rising star, and he has been for some time. So I think
Let's hope he doesn't go to Hollywood.
dedicating his resources to getting to know Canadians, I think that's better than sitting in Parliament.
Yeah, I mean, objectively, I think it is the smartest move. I think that people will criticize him for it, and I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but as far as I'm aware, that it really is not too consequential, him not having a seat right now.
No, he put Guy Caron as his guy.
Yeah, I mean, he's not the opposition party right now. It's it's not anything,
a softer issue.
It's not a big deal. So I mean, I think I'd do the same in his position. I think he's doing exactly what he should be doing. If we're talking from a neutral point of view, and yeah, more power to him. If it's if he thinks it's gonna help him win, then it's the smart thing to do.
Oh, one thing that I think we should have discussed that happened recently. What was it?
Was it with the TA? Oh,
yeah, that's what the thing. What's her name?
Laurier. So,
Laurier.
Laurier University, a teaching assistant. We're just going to go through this quickly. But a teaching assistant showed a clip of Jordan Peterson on a TVO program talking about gender-neutral pronouns.
Oh, Lindsay Shepherd.
Yeah, that's her name. And she was basically given a lot of slack for it by the university, and she was saying...
I wouldn't say actually by the university. I would say it was 3 nutcases, actual professors.
Well, I mean,
it's still technically university,
extension, yeah,
right?
Yeah,
so they basically pulled her into their office and basically said, you're creating a hostile environment for students. You're waging violence against trans
violence
people.
and
And then at one point, what really stuck out to me is that the person talking to her is like, you can't show this stuff, that opinion, it's not good. And then she goes, all opinions are valid here. And he goes, in the university, and he goes, well, it's not actually true. And I was like, you just proved the biggest point of the right.
And the point where he goes, this would be like showing a clip of Hitler from a neutral perspective. How up your ass can your head be, for Christ's sake?
To compare Jordan Peterson.
Absolutely ridiculous. I mean, he brought it down to a Milo Yiannopoulos comparison, which I still think is quite the stretch. I mean, Milo is purposefully offensive. He's just
he's a
comedian. Jordan Peterson, debates actual issues. He's not purposefully offending. He's not. It's just absolutely ridiculous, and I'm glad to see the reaction this has gotten. I'm glad to see that this kind of. I'm sorry, what's the word I'm looking for? But people don't like to see people being silenced for their opinions, and it's seeping into the mainstream, and it's really good to see. And is it everything all good?
No, just move a bit more.
Okay.
Sorry.
And sorry, I lost my train of thought there, but it's good to see people's reactions to it, because nobody likes what the university's doing.
It's completely ridiculous.
And it was pretty quick, actually. It was
The
one
outrage,
day. Yeah.
Was it a couple of days ago? Wasn't it? No.
A couple of days ago.
Well, at least when the story broke. But
Yeah.
I'm gonna be honest. I haven't read the story. I saw the headline and I didn't read the actual story. Whatever you two just said was new information to me. But my issue with that is that students in university, I don't care what you guys think. I care what you guys think, but in this light, students in university are figuring out so much with themselves and their orientation and where they identify on the gender spectrum, and for me to sort of bring Jordan Peterson into the room can be threatening. And I know that doesn't sound like the free speech thing to do and whatever, but you know, when you're looking at a university room, you don't know who identifies where, who gets triggered with what, who blah 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 blah, and to bring that sort of high profile guy that has to some sort of been on a crusade to bring down, you know, the non-gender binary pronouns, I think that it can be threatening, and I don't necessarily agree with the TA getting fired.
I don't think they were fired, were they?
No,
they weren't fired.
Just
She was just
that her
actions
Thanks,
were
Adam.
wrong.
You just spread fake news. Good
Sorry.
job.
all her lesson plans would have to be audited from then on.
Okay. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that to sort of put her under this magnifying glass for the rest of her term as a TA. Mm-hmm. And more likely than not, and this isn't fake news, more likely than not when her contract is up, I can't see her being rehired. Mm-hmm. There are so many TAs in the queue ready to be hired.
To replace her, yeah.
I think that it was a mistake to show the video. I don't know, like, I know that you two or three might disagree with that.
I definitely disagree with that. I'll explain why, though, but.
And I get why some controversy was stirred up. That's all what I wanted to say.
I just want to say that I get where you're coming from.
Yeah.
It's just you have to be exposed to stuff that you're not necessarily ready for. Like in grade 10 history, they show us Schindler's List, for example, or clips of Hitler, right? And that can be threatening to a Jew in the room, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, you have to understand what's going on. You have to learn about it. So I think it's fair to show Jordan Peterson. I think
I feel like some sort of warning should have been put in.
I mean, I guess I don't necessarily think it's necessary, but I can see that. I can certainly concede that being fine. I mean, at what point do people
give a student that would find Jordan Peterson threatening the option to leave the room?
But I don't think.
But I think that's always an option.
If
though.
you look
can
at the
always
clip,
leave
though,
the
of
room.
what he was even talking about,
because it was a bilateral debate, is
yeah,
what it was.
exactly.
Yeah.
They were having a
It wasn't just
conversation
him talking.
between someone.
Oh, okay.
I forget.
I don't know what kind of video he showed either.
It was
on the TVO special.
Yeah, it was just a panel discussion on TVO. So,
yeah.
and then Jordan just explained his opinion, but I think it's regardless if you disagree with what Jordan Peterson has to say, like it's very important to. Damn it, I always do this now.
Well, sorry to cut you off, but he wasn't saying anything about
he
non-binary pronouns being
Yeah.
invalid or anything. He was just
Okay.
talking about Bill C-16.
Yeah,
is
he
what
was just
talking
talking about
Okay.
being forced to say.
He was talking about
Again, I didn't watch the special.
coercion
I didn't read
of
the
polite
article.
language.
Okay.
My point being though is that, like, if someone is like more left leaning or center or right or anything like that, and they can't be exposed to someone's different opinion, and they can't think rationally about that, then you shouldn't be in university.
Yeah.
To be
Yeah.
honest,
No,
if we can't have a
I'd
discussion
agree
about
with
sexual
that.
violence and stuff like that,
Yeah.
even if you are a survivor and stuff like that, like. Then how are we supposed to like better our society and to improve and to help our survivors?
And
our
if it's something you
victims?
don't want to hear, I mean, for
Leave the
sure. I mean,
room.
you can leave the room.
Yeah.
It's certainly not wise to shield yourself from everything, but I certainly recognize that certain things can be very hard for people to hear, and they can leave the room, and that's fine.
Exactly.
But to say no, I don't want to listen to this, so nobody else can listen.
Yeah,
to
I don't
it.
agree with
That's-
that.
yeah,
If
that's
you want to leave the
absolutely
room,
ridiculous.
you can leave the room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we got to move on but thank you for bringing that up. I wanted to talk about it, but I just
think it was more pressing for breaking news, right?
so we're gonna move on to our main story of the week, which is we're back to our What the Fuck series. So our story, What the Fuck is a Right? On today's show, we bring you What the Fuck is a Right? To the right, tune in to find out what the fuck is a right. This is why I didn't send you guys the script. You would have cut that line out. That was my introduction to the topic, as you guys noticed. Thought I'd lighten the mood a little bit. Anyway, today, again, we talk about rights. The term of a right has been under constant debate in theory and in practice. On this episode, we take a closer look at the term through our What the Fuck series. Before we start, remember, we are live on Facebook, so be sure to comment on our feed, and your thoughts will be read live on air, just as last week. So, let's begin. First question, obviously, what the fuck is a right?
Very aggressive, Elliot.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I mean, there's many definitions, and I think that one thing most people can at least agree on is that a right is the legal ability to do something without fear of government intervention or prevention.
No, go ahead.
I mean, I think that many people would disagree and say that there's more to it than that, but I think most people can agree that that is a good foundation, I'd say.
For me, the concept of a right is there are two ways to look at a right for me. One is, again, like Marshall mentioned, the legal aspect. Looking at the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms and the Constitution and blah, blah, blah. But also, if you are a religious person, the idea of a right, for a lot of religious people, rights come from God. That's where a right starts and ends. As a person, you have rights, and those rights come from God. So I think that for both ways, I feel like a religious person can, does have rights under the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and there's sort of the broad United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights and all that. So I think that a religious person can have both hats, but for religious people, the base of a right comes from God, whereas from an antichrist atheist they would come from more the legal sort of documentation, the charter, and things like that.
Yeah, I definitely agree with the more legal aspect, just because
Yeah.
I like the idea
more
of our
pragmatic.
Constitution being like 99.9% absolute. So that's what I like about that. So yeah, it's pretty interesting, and also the difference between having a right and then what our privileges are.
Well, that's
yeah,
later.
so that's pretty good. It's a
But
good way to discuss that.
but regarding your point, Adam, about religious people and their morals, I have a question about that. Should governments or morals determine rights? Like, who's supposed to...
I'm gonna go with government. Like there are so many different religions. There are so many different ways people interpret those religions. If you want the minute, like let's say we choose Catholicism. Canada is a Catholic majority country. Let's say we go with the majority religion. We go with Catholicism. Let's say we bring a community together to decide under the Bible what rights are we all entitled to. Even that, you lose the sort of neutral Bible aspect of what is a right, because the moment you bring people in to interpret that, you're automatically mixing in the government to interpret, because you need documentation, you need bills to pass and things like that. You can't just be like, this is the Bible, do with it what you will, these are the rights that are embedded in the book, in the holy book. So I think that it's going to go with government, because we are not sort of a unilateral 100% religious state.
So I'm a Calvinist, and I mean,
Which is? Sorry, I don't know what that is.
He doesn't do Celsius or Fahrenheit. He believes in Calvin.
Calvinist philosophy is that the only objective source for rights and morals and ethics comes from God, and I certainly think that applies whether you believe in God or you don't, and even whether God actually exists or not. I don't think God existing is a necessary precedent for Calvinism. I think that the concept of God is undeniably there. You cannot deny the concept of God as much as you want to say that God doesn't exist. And again, I don't know whether God exists or not, but we all know the concept of God exists. It can't be denied. Much like how
there are religious people out there, God, the concept of God is
exactly
a thing, yeah.
And so much like how you can say all you want, you don't believe in the U.S. Federal Reserve dollar because it's not a tangible thing. You can't touch it. It exists. The concept of it exists, and so. This concept of God is infallible and perfect and only wants the best for his creations, his people. And I think that that's the best standard for setting out rights, because whoever else we take rights from, whoever else rights derive from, is imperfect and self-interested and fallible. And for that reason, I think the rights do have to come from God. I would say for Canada that it would come from the Catholic interpretation of God, because again, God as a concept only wants the best for all his creations, and whether you are Catholic or Presbyterian or Muslim or Jewish or Sikh or anything, under this interpretation you are still a creation of God, and this God still wants the best for you. And that's why I think it's objectively the best way
Yeah.
to
There's a
source
very,
rights.
very big flaw with that, though. For a non-religious person, the idea of God is a concept. For a religious person, God would have that power and right to give you your rights. For a non-religious person, God is this entity, this being, this thing that other people believe in. I can recognize God, but to recognize that he has any power over my being and over my existence is wrong for a non-religious person. So to say that God does love all his creations, and if there's a God, I'm assuming he does love all his creations, to assume that those creations, all those creations love him and believe in the path that God would put all of his people on is wrong, because not everybody believes in God. And I don't think that, going back to sort of religious fundamentals is the way to take rights. Rights are moving in a very sort of, I don't have the word in the English language, in a sort of progressive way. And I think that when you bring religion into a lot of things, and I'm not going to say which religions or by how much, but when you bring religion into things, it moves things in a very regressive way. And I get what you're saying about Calvinism, and I get it. I get it, but the thing is, as a non-religious person, I get it. I don't agree with it.
Okay.
So that's where I see the flaw. A non-religious person can get it, that God can give rights to people, but they won't feel it.
They won't accept it.
They won't
for
accept
sure.
it
And
like
I mean,
a religious person.
but I just
I
think
also
that-
don't necessarily think that's relevant. You're absolutely right that
Yeah.
a non-religious person wouldn't see God as loving them, but I think that's I would counter that by saying that doesn't matter, because the concept of God is a all-loving, benevolent force, being rather.
But a lot of people don't agree with that.
And I mean, I don't think that it's. There are certainly different interpretations you
Yeah.
could take, but I think that the if you get down to the theology of it, it is the case that this concept of God, whether he exists or not, loves all that he created humans in his image, loves humans as he loves himself, and I think is only wants the best. And
Then the question is, where do rights come from? How are they determined? Are they determined by God? Are they determined by
That's the problem,
just the
though.
people
Yeah.
sitting in a room thinking, okay, is a right the right to water, or a right to this, or do they scrap through the Bible and go, okay, this is what God says, so this is right? Like, where do rights come from? How do governments? Because you said, Adam, that governments should be the ones to decide rights, but where do they come from?
But that's the problem, though, because of the origins of such important documents like the Constitution and stuff like that. They have the origin of those documents are based off of the prominent religion at the time. So now, because we kind of are shifting towards a world where religion isn't seen as the most dominant force in the world now, as for determining our rights and stuff.
Is that
like
a good thing or a bad thing?
Some people would argue that's a bad thing. I don't necessarily argue that it's a bad thing, just because I actually do believe in the idea of being able to have morals and ethics without having to read an Abrahamic scripture or any other type of religious scripture. But I definitely think that you can definitely use those types of books as a way to just improve yourself, better yourself as a person. Like, just because you don't like religion or you don't believe in God doesn't mean you can't take positive things out from those materials and use it in writing and determining our rights here in Canada or in any other state.
So we have a comment here from Sam who says, if rights are given by God, why are they different among cultures and nations? Wouldn't they be universal if that were true?
Well,
and I do have a counter to that. And yeah, I mean, if every I suppose you certainly have a point, but if you look at the countries which are based off of Judeo-Christian foundations, they are the freest countries in the world. I think that I can't think of a single Christian nation that is less free than a Muslim or Hindu nation. I mean, India, I don't even have to say Hindu nation there. And of course, Israel, which is the one Jewish state, is very free as well. And well, I mean, in terms of...
I'm not laughing at Israel being a Jewish state. Ilya just dabbed.
Oh, okay. And I mean, yes. So there are certainly nations that do not derive their rights from the Abrahamic God, but I think that they're less free because of it and have less rights and it's unjust.
I don't know why I sort of lost my trail of thought there.
No, it happens. I do it all the time.
For me, going back to, and I hate to go in circles, but going back to the idea that God loves all his creations, I don't know how you would reason that to a gay person.
Well, I mean, God loves gay people, and that's very clearly outlined in the Bible. I mean, and homosexuality is a sin, but it's no more a sin than something like lying or coveting your neighbor's wife, which is something everybody does.
Mm-hmm.
God has no discrimination towards gay people any more than he has discrimination towards people who cheat on a math test.
Mm-hmm.
And now, I mean, I personally have no qualms with homosexuality or gay marriage or anything, and I'm just right now telling you what's in the Bible.
Yeah.
And of course, I'm not a red letter Christian. I don't take the Bible literally or anything.
Uh-huh.
But I it's a sin in the Bible, yes, but it doesn't make God love them any less.
But okay.
It'd be difficult to try to rationalize that.
If you walk
someone
up
who
to
is
a gay person and says God loves you, if the gay person has read the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, I don't understand how they could even imagine
they would definitely
God
disagree.
loving them. They would definitely disagree, and I do know, and I'm sure that there are, LGBTQ plus religious people. I don't think that's
There are others, like Milo, for example.
Yeah, but to the sort of, and I don't want to speak for the community because I'm not part of the community, but for the
Are you the A in that community then? Are you technically
You're the ally?
I would
The
think
second A.
I would
The second
want to
A, yeah.
think I'm an ally, but I need you would need someone from the community to tell you an ally. You can't really consider.
I've
yourself
seen the
one.
second A in the acronym there being lately not included because I agree it's not necessary.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. So yeah, I don't think I don't see how that you could reason with that to them. So if you automatically if one community can't see that sort of argument being made, then you are sort of at a loss in trying to use that to convince a nation that that's where the rights come from.
I would also say people would disagree with with what Marshall had to say, is saying homosexuality is a very common sin in comparison to.
Yeah, I don't agree.
I would
with
say no.
that,
I would.
but again,
I'll take
I
it that
haven't
view.
read the Bible.
I would what I would say though is that people from the LGBTQ plus community would say, specifically. Oh, hold on. What was I trying? Oh my goodness.
LGBTQ people, Bible,
Yeah. Hold
reading
on.
the Bible.
It was specific about it.
we have a
I was gonna say that they wouldn't take in consideration Catholic views and stuff like that due to the religious colonialism from the past and stuff like that.
Yeah.
They would be like, well, these people were they were oppressing. I don't even like using that type of terminology sometimes, but they were like,
No, but a lot of
Already in the
slavery
origin
was
they-
justified
Yeah.
with Bible scripture.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so I can see that being a conflict. Yeah.
So, Marshall, you said we have a comment?
We have a question. We have Karina asking, what do you guys think of sovereign citizens? And now I'm not sure if you guys are aware what sovereign citizens are.
Can't say I am.
Sovereign
Not
citizens essentially believe that they're not subject to the laws of the land, that they are only subject to the laws that they prescribe for themselves.
Oh, no.
I remember that video.
yeah.
There's some girl
I mean,
screaming that
there's
the
plenty
police
of funny
officer-
videos on
Yeah.
Yeah, I
YouTube of
remember that.
people
She
getting
was
pulled
whack.
over by the police saying, I am not a human, I am a person, you cannot search me because I am not a human, I'm a citizen, I'm not in a vehicle, I am in a car, things like that.
It's just like
I
Matt
don't
Damon
even
in
kn-
Good Will Hunting.
I don't even know where to start with
Yeah,
that.
honestly, they're basically insane.
Yeah, like
I think they're really fucked.
yeah.
I think
I-
the other
what I
term
would
is a
say.
free inhabitant.
Yeah, freedom
Yeah.
of the land, free inhabited, all that kind of stuff. And there's plenty of great videos of people being pulled over by cops and refusing to comply, and getting their windows broken and tasered and stuff because they insist that they are not moving, they're traveling, and
Yeah, just
other nonsense like that.
that just sounds like oh, God, that made me dizzy.
Just sounds stupid.
Honestly, it just sounds stupid. Like
Yeah.
you can't reason with someone like that. you know,
Because they're literally in their own world. And
they're-
they don't know
yeah,
what the hell's
if
going
I'm not
on.
in a car, I'm driving. If I'm not moving, I'm traveling.
Yeah.
Like,
So for
it just sounds like a Jaden Smith tweet. Like, I don't.
It does. For
Yeah.
example, I mean, I was watching this one video and this guy was didn't have his tail light. One of his tail lights was out, and the officer says you can't be in a moving vehicle with a tail light out. And then he goes, "My vehicle is not moving. I am traveling. I am within the vehicle, but I am the one moving, and it's not my vehicle."
How much of the population do they represent? Realistically.
I don't know, like
Realistically.
just a very, very small fraction.
Yeah,
Very-
if you have a mental illness that, you know what, I'm not going to make that argument. Never mind.
Do you think it's a mental illness?
I think that some of it certainly would be. I don't think it's a mental illness in and of
Yeah.
itself, but I think that mental illness could cause somebody to think that
Yeah,
they're not subject to
that-
the laws of the land.
That's what I was gonna say. Like, you know, for the portion of a population that's mentally ill that, you know, would feel that they could think that way, I would put them on the same level as those people. But again, a mental illness is a whole other argument with a whole other set.
Yeah, I
of-
would just.
I
I remember
Yeah.
Simplified
Yeah.
and called them stupid,
Yeah.
and I just pulled it up. Apparently, they're, I guess it's like even in itself its own form of self-identification too. But they say that there's as many as 300,000 sovereign citizens in the U.S. or something like that. So
Wow.
it's a decent population.
And
so.
the things they'll do to, like, they'll actually try and ratify it legally. Like, they'll have their birth certificate annulled and things like that. And
Has it worked?
no.
Okay.
Things like that. You know, you regardless of that, you still are subject to the laws of the country you're in.
Yeah.
They'll do things like become stateless or try to become stateless purposefully.
But the
which
UN
is
has already
something that's very
denied that
hard
for
to do.
someone to be possible, though. So
And I remember I was in high school and a buddy of mine got a job and he comes back from his first day. He's like, "My boss doesn't have to follow laws." I'm like, "What?" And he's like, "Yeah, man, my boss like got rid of his citizenship. He's a freeman." I'm like, "Well, he still has to follow." No. He doesn't have to follow laws. He's a freeman. He's not a citizen.
then if he would, if
he's
he
a
was
citizen
like
of
that,
himself.
So what does he not pay taxes? Does
No,
he,
I mean, they try and avoid it as much as possible. And when the tax man comes knocking, they say, "Well, no, I'm not a citizen of the U.S. I'm a citizen of myself."
Wow, God, I don't even know.
And so
how-
I think for that reason is why we need an objective source of laws and rights, and maybe not for that reason, but
yeah,
that-
no, that's one
think
of
that-
the.
we need a source of laws that goes beyond men, because
Yeah.
these people do almost have a point that, you know, why do men decide what I can and can't do and how much taxes I have to pay and whatnot. And I am certainly not advocating for total just theocracy, and I would never suggest that. I do
the
certainly
Islamic
support.
Republic of Canada.
I do
That's a
certainly
nice ring
support
to it.
a theological
Afghanistan.
inspiration for laws and rights, but no theocracy whatsoever. And I still am big on separation of church and state, of course. But I do think that we are a Christian nation, de facto at least. And
Very de facto.
very de facto, of course. And I think that the foundations of our society should be based in Christianity, and maybe we need to make accommodations for people because that doesn't work for everybody. But I do think that's where the foundations need to come from.
Again, like I just don't see that working. Like you, for example, might agree that, you know, in the Bible, the sin of cheating on a math test or looking, you know, erotically at your neighbor's wife is akin to being homosexual. And I don't want to put words in your mouth. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but, you know, a gay person might look at you and be like, "Are you out of your mind?" So I think that, you know,
That would be a totally reasonable response.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I think there's been terrible interpretations of, or there's been people who interpret the Bible in a way that really is used as a way to treat gay people horribly.
Yeah.
I mean, I want everybody to get the right idea. I don't think being gay is wrong. I'm not trying to say that. I'm just explaining from an objective point of view what is in the Bible. And I think it's terrible the way that the Bible has been used to do that. And I think that that's very a complete bastardization and perversion of the religion.
See, so from that, how do you see the Bible not sort of being spun out of control to justify all sorts of different things?
And so that's
should the
that's what I
Bible
was
be
saying
used
with-
as a moral compass?
Yeah, and so I mean that is what I was saying with.
I don't think it should be the only way.
I
though.
don't want our country to be like I do support separation of church and state. I just do think that the idea of a infallible God is a good place to source rights from, and maybe not to source punishments from or laws from necessarily, but the what's the word? The inalienable rights of all humans. I think is.
But like I would make the argument before though, like with the United States Constitution when it was made, they made it in the idea that it was God-given rights and stuff like that,
Yeah.
and they wrote down all men are equal and free and stuff like that, but
Except black people.
except black people, they weren't
Yeah.
including that. So I'm like, how can we like justify
Yeah.
that? Because everyone has like even like regardless if
Yeah.
the interpretation of the Bible was so cryptic in 1700s,
Yeah.
it's still pretty well. It's not as bad as before, but people still take very extreme positions with and
Very.
justifies it using those books. So I'm like,
No, but like even the ideas of manifest destiny and the divine right,
yeah,
and
or
the
American
mandate-
exceptionalism.
yeah,
stuff
and
like
the
that.
mandate of heaven in China, the divine right.
Have you seen those actually like those drawings by like famous like American painters like post Revolutionary War? Like they show it's like American settlers like with their like what's the name word I'm looking for? It's kind of like their carriages pulling down cattle and they're moving into all of the west, like going west from the 13 colonies, right?
Yeah.
And it's like Lady Liberty.
Yeah,
and like she's
I
like,
haven't
is, like,
seen
oh,
that.
like it's a God mandate to
Yeah.
control the rest of this.
Yeah,
continent,
the
right?
manifest destiny,
Yeah.
and then in France, the divine right to rule by King Louis XIV. The idea of God, I think that the idea of God in history, and I'm looking at history because that's the only sort of measurable example we could have for something like this. The idea of God gets very polluted and twisted and poisoned to rule with an iron fist and to rule with an end-all be-all sort of monarchy. So that's just an issue I have. You cannot rule with God to a secular group of people or a non-religious group of people. It just won't work.
So I think when we talk about manifest destiny, one thing is that while the divine right to take over that land may be totally fine, what is in complete violation of the rights ordained by a creator is the treatment of the Navajo people and the
Hawaiian
people. That is completely in
the
contradiction
Sioux,
to.
yeah.
So while they use the Bible as justification there,
Yeah.
they were wrong.
Yeah.
There is nothing in the Bible that says you can go and remove these native people off their land.
Yeah.
And people will say that, there are accounts in the Bible of people being removed from their native land. The Bible, you have to realize, is there to provide context and stories as well. It's not everything written in the Bible is law. That is very clearly outlined when it is law and when it is not. So yes, in the Bible there are accounts of people being removed from their land, but it is not some sort of divine law being decreed that native people.
So
can
it
be
wouldn't be
removed
like a
from their
right, is what we're discussing. So like the right to remove Aboriginal people.
land.
from
Yeah,
their
no,
land.
that is not a right. and
See,
there's
but
no-
where does it start and end? Like, if I have a right to this land, and there are people on this land, and I want to be on this land,
Well,
like-
that's the same. Well,
like,
we're
hello,
having
like,
that
you
argument.
can't-
Like we're having that
Yeah.
argument right now in international. Oh, I sound way too. Excuse me.
So you have a right to the land as
A right
as
to
a
the land,
person, for
yeah.
sure, and you don't have a right to take somebody out from that land.
Uh-huh.
If they have already used that land to create a prosperous life for themselves, then you have to go find land elsewhere.
Okay, so,
So
then if we're
Sam-
talking about property rights,
You
and
can
stuff
make
like
deals, of course, and I mean I know treaties were used very
Flawed.
very.
Flawed.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm
Flawed.
not trying to say that we're
Flawed.
good. I know treaties were used in a terrible way, and so I suppose that was a bit of a loophole, and it's not good.
Well, we've had a discussion about property rights before, and you said that like you think that like most rights are.
Well, the only real rights are property rights.
Yeah, that was what
Yeah.
you were
So
saying.
Samuel then has a question. Does that mean rights are subjective and a victim of their times?
Are they subjective? No, but they were violated due to the, I think, people taking
colonial
liberties.
idea.
Yeah, sure.
Also, then the idea that those rights weren't created before those nations were actually created, right?
Mhm.
So, like, how could we create those rights before the Constitution was made?
Yeah,
so obviously, people are gonna.
You can't show up to a people and be like, "Well, I have a right to this land. I bought it from the Hudson's Bay Company." Like,
Mhm.
Yeah.
What? Like you're like the native peoples of this land had never heard of the Hudson's Bay Company before.
Yeah.
What is a Hudson's Bay? What is a purchase? What
Well,
is
for sure. And if all these people had acted in accordance with the rights that would be outlined in the Bible, then all humans are created equal.
Yeah.
And, you know, these people who may not have heard of the Hudson's Bay Company doesn't mean that you can take them from their land.
Yeah.
And so it's... I see where you're coming from in that people have claimed to be acting
Yeah.
in Christianity, but were in fact not. And I don't see it as any more fallible than any just man. I mean, I think without the justification of Christianity, they very well would have done the same thing.
Yeah.
That was just an easy way to get the people on their side.
Yeah. I don't know if I agree with that, but you won't know what we won't know what would have happened
For sure.
had
Yeah, we
if
can't know.
things gone differently.
So Sam then has another question. If rights are given by God, why are they different? Oh wait, he already asked that. That just came back up. But the last question then, I had another one about rights versus privileges. We can get that really quickly, like 1 minute into it. But
Yeah.
what's the how can you tell what's the difference between a right and a privilege? Because nowadays, internet is said to be like a basic human right.
Yeah, as of 2011,
Yeah,
the United Nations.
but like before 2011, it was a privilege. So, how does this change? Why does this change? And at what point do we stop? Where do you draw the line?
I'll take a minute, a literal minute.
Yeah.
I think that we have a privilege being in Canada. First off, right off the bat, we are in the best country in the world. And Canada has its problems. Canada has a lot of work to do, but I personally believe we are in the best country
I'd
in the
agree
world.
with that.
I think that, the fact that we can sit in this room and have this conversation is a privilege.
Yeah, like the
There-
right to freedom of
There are
speech and the
countries
right to
that do
express
not
opinion.
have that. The right to this technology, the right that you can hear me, or the right that we have to Facebook is a privilege. Like that like the clothes on my back, a privilege. I think that, rights sort of keep me, I guess, like they'll give me the base level of living. But privileges are all about the standard.
I would say privileges would be of like luxuries and stuff.
Yeah,
like
we
that
have a
too.
very high standard of living. The fact that I can live downtown in an apartment right close to campus with heating and a fridge and a stove and a microwave, that's a privilege. Plumbing, that's a privilege.
I would also say driving is another.
Driving
privilege.
is a privilege. The TTC, and a lot of people would disagree with me, but the TTC is a privilege.
for sure.
Public transport, healthcare, privilege. Like, rights might be sort of, again, the base of existence, but privileges are all of that sort of expansion packs that come on top of that. I
Yeah.
can't think.
DLC
I agree.
I can't think of a better term
I think
for
that
it.
people like to say anything that is provided by a government becomes a right.
Yeah.
And I would completely disagree. I think that it's still a privilege. The internet is not a right at all. It's a privilege.
It's a big privilege.
I do think that governments should be providing it, not for free, but or not.
Keep
I
net
think that it
neutrality.
should be a public utility.
Yeah.
Provided to everybody, not for free. But that doesn't mean it's a right. That has nothing to do with you fundamentally existing as a human, which I think is where rights come down to.
Yeah.
Fair enough. And then the last question is: are there any rights or that shouldn't be rights, and vice versa? Are there any privileges right now that should be considered rights?
Yeah, so
You
some
have like
countries-
30 seconds. to
Some
answer that.
countries like to claim things are rights when they objectively are not. South Africa, all people have a right to housing and food, and guess what? Nobody in South Africa has
housing and food.
And so you can't just claim things are rights when they aren't, because that creates a serious problem of shortages and whatnot. And
I don't think the right, and this isn't so relevant now, it is relevant in parts of the world, but I don't think the right for a people to claim another land is a right. I don't
agree.
think Russia has a right to Crimea, for example.
I agree.
I don't think Israel has a right to the occupation. That's sort
So-
of what I agree.
I do. Sorry, I just have to cut you off because we do have
Okay.
to go. But excellent discussion. We can even, go into it on the next episode just to briefly
for sure.
mention it again. But that was our show for this week. Thank you to everyone that tuned in and that commented on our feed. We really appreciate it. We love hearing from you. Excellent discussion from you guys. Thank you so much. A brand new episode of the Raben Report will be coming to you next week. Same day, same time, same people. Have a great day, everyone.